Looks like CNN. This has finally got the international headlines in regards to the massive flooding that happened in Waverly, Tennessee over the weekend. But as far as I know, they still have 21 missing and several that they haven't found yet. I went down to that area as of yesterday and spent a great deal of time down there, and come back late yesterday evening, which would have been Sunday evening. Today's Monday. And I put out a gesture towards various people bringing false accusations into my life pertaining to me praying or possibly praying for a mighty curse to fall upon to the Good Samaritans, to the citizens there in Waverly, Tennessee, pertaining to what went on with a few of their police officers back about 3 or 4 years ago. I wanted it to be recognized that I do not pray for catastrophes to happen. I do not pray for hardships to happen to anybody or to any group of people or to any nation. I pray for the blessings of God to fall upon to them people and for God to be merciful unto all of us. That's what we as Christians are supposed to pray. I realize that there's been some things in the past up in Land Between the Lakes that I've been involved in, that I have apologized for, pertaining to the curse that it talks about in the book of Revelations, that I felt led of God, a planning upon to society, upon to this earth, during the final ritual in 2009. I have apologized for that many, many times, and I feel guilty about that every time something like this occurs, because it does have a flashback whenever you have been up in the woods. As long as I was up in the woods, originally praying for a revival, a movement of God, that because of the hardships that kept falling upon to the founder of the Windmill Ministries, I felt forced or inclined to reverse that and actually plant a curse upon to this precious property that they call Land Between the Lakes, off Legal Road 142 off Sugar Bay Road. So every time something like this occurs, I have a flashback towards, could this have been part of that prayer there towards the last, in fasting and praying of God basically bringing a curse upon to this planet. And until we see society turn from their sinful and wicked ways, these curses are only going to increase or intensify. So I have a remarkable amount of passion in regards towards, and I hate to use the word guilt, because it sounds like it almost puts me in the same profile as someone that is either weak or someone that is guilty of doing something incredibly, incredibly wrong. And I know that in my defending the Windmill Ministries, I was forced to have to pray this particular prayer that it talks about in the book of Revelations until this curse gets removed from this planet. I know in 2005 I was trying to put out an advisory or a warning to the 43rd President of the United States in the form of a t-shirt by telling the President of the free world at that time that a bloody road ahead was coming, and that woe be unto the inhabitants here onto earth pertaining to the first woe cometh quickly. I sent this as an advisory in 2005, and since then we have seen the gun violence here in America and throughout the planet intensify tremendously. Just like whenever I was up in the Kentucky region towards trying to tell people about electrical disturbances, that I was falsely accused of going to create the electrical disturbances by possibly blowing up the Kentucky Dam, that all the water that you're seeing in this creek bed right here will eventually wind up in the Tennessee River that leads down into the region of Grand Rivers and Benton, Kentucky, over into that same area in that same river. So whenever stuff like this occurs, like I said, I don't want to use the word guilt, but consciously I wonder, oh Lord, is this something of your doings towards you actually lifting your hand of protection off of certain individuals pertaining to the natural catastrophes that we're now seeing, which is basically acts of God, in the magnitude of that in which that I had done up in the sacred site in Land Between the Lakes up in western Kentucky. I have worked several different natural catastrophes, including cutting my teeth on Katrina down in the lower part of Mississippi, that I was grateful enough to work, give or take, for almost a year, working through and with FEMA, the Corps of Engineers, towards doing a lot of removal debris and helping clean things up in that area. Since then, I've worked other catastrophes too as well. Major tornadoes, major hailstorms, major floods, various things that has occurred here up onto the planet. But I don't think that I've ever seen anything quite like, I think they said 16 or 17 inches of rain fell in about a 4.5, 5 hour period. They're calling it a 24-hour period because I guess that's how they rank it. But this is supposedly the highest amount of water that has ever fell from the sky in that length of time ever recorded in the state of Tennessee. And I don't know if that includes all the other states or not, but it's supposed to be the top ranking amount of moisture that fell from the sky in such a short period of time. Of course, with Waverly being down in the lower part of a creek bed, a great deal of it, and you got mountains all around you, whenever you have this type of rainfall, it has no other place to go other than to go in the direction of gravity, which is down, which is the lowest part of that area, which was the creek. Well, the creek started overflowing, and it started swelling, and it started swelling immediately within minutes, almost like a mini tsunami, a tidal wave that had suddenly come upon to these people just within a matter of minutes. And the thing about it is, it wasn't so much of the tsunami that turned this into such of a biblical proportion pertaining to its catastrophic powers towards the water coming into their lives, but it was whenever it started ushering away, it went out 5 times stronger than it ever thought about coming in, that created a force like you would not believe, and in the force is what has caused the tremendous damage that you can now visually see. Like I said, it's one thing for your home to get flooded, and it's to the extent that you have to go in and you got to pull out the sheetrock, and you got to replace all the carpet, and you got to replace all your furniture. and you can still basically save the structure from, let's say, waist down. Spray it down with mold contaminants, get in there with fans, dry everything out, and then go back with new plywood and new sheetrock. But whenever you have a force of water that moves like basically a river, in which that's basically what it was. It was a river that had been created by this amount of water that come down through the hills. You had no other type of results other than to see the power of water and how massive that it can be in its force. So please listen to this very carefully and pray for these people. And if you got any type of financial funds, I'm pretty sure that they've already set up various financial sites over in that area. Tennessee is real good about doing stuff like that, pertaining to Red Cross and FEMA, etc., etc. Because I heard on the radio, or maybe it was Facebook or something, that as of right now, the best thing that people can do for those people is to send monetary money, because it's such of a close confinement that if you put too many people in there, like it was yesterday, you basically only had elbow room and elbow room only. Besides that, it creates a pocket of carbon dioxide that lies right in that little area, and the next thing you know, you'll have people choking up because of all the automobiles with all the carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. So to bring all them people down there, as I was yesterday, is only creating a problem instead of solving a problem. Right now, the people need big government, big movements towards crisis centers and Red Cross to come in there and stabilize that situation, because it's one of the worst situations that I've ever experienced, other than some of the major catastrophes that's hit this country, beginning with Katrina and of course 9/11. So if you don't mind, keep this in mind while you're watching this, because it's extremely, extremely sad.
Earth Matters series, scientists say that one effect of the climate crisis is that warmer air can hold more water, which sometimes results in a deluge of rain and catastrophic flooding. This past weekend, about 90 minutes west of Nashville, a storm predicted to dump 6 inches of rain around Waverly, Tennessee, dropped instead 17 inches. The resulting flash floods claimed at least 21 lives. CNN's Nadia Romero saw the damage firsthand.
My mama being rescued.
In this intense cell phone video, Amanda Maples shot from her roof the moment she had been waiting for.
Over and over, I saw them pick up our neighbors and our family, risking their own lives, for us, and seeing that moment of my mom surfacing, because I didn't know if she was alive in there, was something I'll never forget. I was fine sitting on that roof all day if I had to, as long as she got out okay.
Maples on her roof looking and screaming for her mother, who she thought was swept away in floodwaters. Amanda Maples' mother clinging onto a kitchen island, worrying about her daughter Amanda across the street.
The guy came in and he hollered, "Anybody in here?" And I said, "Yes, me." and he came back there and said, "Oh, you okay?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "What about Amanda across the street?" He said, "She's okay, she's on the roof." And as a parent, to see her child on the roof, it's heart-wrenching, but it's like, oh yeah, save my child.
And I was saying save my mom.
Record-breaking rain sent floodwaters surging through rural Tennessee Saturday, devastating several communities within Humphreys County. At least 21 people have been killed, hundreds of homes now completely uninhabitable. John Thornton lost everything.
You wouldn't think this would happen, but it's total devastation.
A massive search is underway for the missing in communities where the water rose the fastest.
Our people need help. We're going to be overwhelmed for the next probably 30 days at least, overwhelmed.
Of those reported dead, 2 were 7-month-old twins. A family member says the rushing water swept the babies out of their father's arms.
It's been a huge impact to this small community, town will wear these scars for many decades.
As the search continues, families tackle the question of how or even if they should rebuild. not much to salvage in Maple's home.
That's when I called 911.
John Thornton losing his house and rental property, wondering what to do next.
I don't know, man. I don't know what we're going to do.
And that number of people who have been missing has been fluctuating since right after the storm. We heard about 50 people. Today, that's been downgraded to about 10 people still missing. And here's why. Electricity went out, still out for some 2,000 homes, and cell service was down. Take a look at this house behind me. This house was picked up off its foundation from 2 blocks away and came crashing into this gas station before it came to a stop. And there's the car that was inside, picked up with the house. The neighbors tell me they were worried about the woman who lived inside. They didn't know if she was in the car trying to get away or she was somewhere in the house crushed by the home. And so they reported her missing. But I spoke to that woman just about 30 minutes ago, and she said she's fine. She was staying with her daughter at the time of the storm. She survived, and she's just thinking about everyone else who's still missing. Jake?
All right, CNN's Nadia Romero, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, we're live in Kabul as thousands are still waiting for a way out of Afghanistan. Stay with us.
Let's back up a little bit right here. I want to touch up on something. Whenever they talk about the devastation being this bad, it's hard for the human mind to wrap around in thinking that how can a whole settlement, how can a whole city or a town just within a matter of hours be totally ruined. That's exactly what happened in Waverly, Tennessee, pertaining to the surge of water that not only come in and inundated their area, but then as it was leaving, created so much turbulence and so much power that it was literally sweeping cars up on top of cars and houses up on top of houses. And unless you've seen something like this with your own human eyes, in which the only thing that I can compare this to would be the tsunami that hit over in Japan. I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe 11, 12 years ago, whenever they had a massive earthquake in the sea, and it created this tsunami that come into this big tidal wave that come into the inland area that they estimate had killed at least 500,000 people. I don't know that to this day if they ever put a final tally on just exactly how much monetary loss that costed the citizens in that area whenever that happened. But once more, this is a mini version of the very same thing, of seeing that type of destruction that happened on a lot of live TV, whenever you could see houses and people and cars floating down the rivers. This was basically a mini version of that, but it was still just as powerful and just almost as deadly, pertaining to it, the lethalness of it taking human life. It's a complete total disaster. I'm going to say out of the whole town of Waverly, over 2/3 have been damaged, and 1/3 out of those 2/3 are damaged to the point that it's uninhabitable. I don't know if they're going to move the people from that area, because it's going to take months, if not years, to rebuild schools, to rebuild this, to rebuild that, and it will definitely change the whole concept of Waverly, Tennessee, where Loretta Lynn lives, the country western singer. She lives in Waverly County. It will definitely change the way those people function and live for decades to come. For decades to come. I'm sure a lot of them will be fortunate, and they'll be able to go live with possibly friends, or they'll be able to go live with some kin folks that didn't get affected this way. But there'll be so many of them that don't have friends, that don't have loved ones, that don't have that immediate fallback to, that will be left desolate towards having to deal with what they deal with in the way that they have to deal with it in regards to an emergency situation like this. Like I said a while ago, there's so much messed up area in such of a little area. And whenever I say a little area, I'm talking about an area that's probably 3.5, 4 miles in length, give or take about a mile wide, that it done so much problem. It even blowed out a main bridge to where whenever you're going to Waverly coming from Camden over through New Johnsonville, after you get down from New Johnsonville, give or take about 4 or 5 miles, they'll stop you and you got to turn and go down a country road, 2 or 3 different country roads, what they call that, High Lake Road or something like that. I had to be on for about 7 or 8 miles yesterday just to get down there to the Waverly area, in which if I hadn't driven on some of those back roads, I would have totally been unfamiliar with where I was. It just so happens it went right by my friend's house, Mr. Billy's house, and it gave me an opportunity of stopping in and making sure that everything looked all right where he was at, in which it was. Fortunately, he built his property or put his home in a non-flooded area that had never been flooded, even though this was like a 500-year flood. But he was gone. Him and his wife was gone. Somebody pulled up a boat and a trailer there at his house, and I seen a big truck there. So obviously he was out helping people, rescuing people, and doing various work in the county. But I couldn't never find him. But his property was okay, and that gave me a peace of mind, at least about my friend Billy. I would have come on into the Waverly area, and right now I'm waiting to find out if there's going to be a mass movement pertaining to Red Cross or other emergency personnel that's going to come in there being formatted by the government. Because this is a big, big deal whenever you have this many. I mean, the woman just got through saying about 2,000 homes. That's not counting the businesses. That's not counting the churches. That's not counting the schools. That's not counting the apartment buildings. I mean, it literally ruined people's lives. And the sad thing about something like this is that once reality sinks in towards the severity of all this, the suicide rate in an incident like this usually tremendously goes up, substantially. And that's the loss of life that either got lost during the initial phase of it, or the loss of life after the initial phase of it is all part of the package towards what actually occurs. And it's extremely, extremely hard. It's just extremely, extremely sad. I dealt with the exact same thing in the Katrina damage. I couldn't tell you the amount of people that was in their lives because they realized that their insurance company was not there to protect them and take care of them. And because they felt like that they wasn't going to be able to start their lives all over again, they just ended their lives. Some of them ate a bunch of pills. Some of them put a bullet in their head. Some of them done other things that I don't like to talk about or think about. But it creates an atmosphere of hostility, give or take, within about the first week, whenever this all starts sinking in, towards people being upset and angry. Whenever I would walk into an area like this, and I'm speaking from the heart, I'm not trying to be fancy, I'm not trying to be nothing other than speaking from the heart. Whenever you go into an area like this, that this type of a catastrophe has happened on a biblical proportion, One or two things is going to happen whenever an individual comes out there holding a sign pertaining to the end is near, or holding a sign pertaining to God is the answer, or holding a sign pertaining to Christ is the way to go, pertaining to religion, religious sign, in the name of Christianity. One or two things will happen. Either that group of people that just got through going through one of the most horrible situations that they've ever been through in their entire lives will either greet you with all humanity towards being humbled in their hearts and being humbled by a situation that just got through rocking their world, or they'll meet you with a clenching fist and they'll tell you, don't mention God around me or for me or anything pertaining to God, because it's God that brought this wrath upon to our community. What they don't realize, that it wasn't God that done this. Just as the commentator was talking towards the first, let's go back to the very first, whenever he was talking about the earth, right there. Let's go back a little more, right there.
In our Earth Matters series, scientists say that one effect of the climate crisis is that warmer air can hold more water, which sometimes results in a deluge of rain and catastrophic flooding.
Now let's get it right there. We're seeing the results from global warming that is warming up the atmosphere, and as they have just got through saying, as the atmosphere warms, it creates more of an atmosphere to be able to hold more moisture. And then whenever it releases, it doesn't release favorably, it releases into a deluge. And we're seeing this again and again and again, not just here in America, but throughout the planet. A matter of fact, give or take about a week before this event right here occurred, there was another event that happened over in just north of Robinsonville, North Carolina, pretty close to the Cherokee village over there, in a little area called Maggie's Valley, that they wound up having the exact same thing happen to them, towards a sudden deluge of water that come down through the hills of the Appalachian Mountains, and the people that was down on the bottom part of it got flooded out, and they was still looking for 25 or 30 people as of last week that just up and disappeared. We're seeing this pattern of weather doing this again and again and again and again. In other words, we don't just get a drizzle or a shower. Now we get a flood. There's two things bad about floods. First of all, it creates a flood that usually destroys property or destroys landscape or pertaining to crops, or even people's lives as far as their homes and cars. But the runoff from a big flood like that, the ground can't absorb it like it could have been if it was a low, slow drizzle or a low, slow rain, to where the ground could have absorbed all the water. So whenever you see a big flood like this, it actually don't do too much for the upper vegetation, because the upper vegetation winds up throwing it off because it's too massive of an amount of rainfall that's falling on that particular piece of property. And of course the lower end winds up where everything collects towards a massive flood that turns into like a tsunami, and we see the results from this. It is super, super sad in knowing that God didn't have nothing to do with this. But there's going to be people that's going to think that out of superstition. They're going to think that God was the ones that brought this anguish, and God was the one that brought this type of misery and sorrow into their lives. I believe this. I don't believe it was of God, because storms come into the Bible that was storms that was supposed to have brought ruin into Jesus' life, as well as the merging boat that he was in, that Jesus basically had to pray to calm the storm, and then turned around and used it for a teaching example by telling his disciples, "Oh, ye have so little faith." We heard that again and again and again throughout the Bible. But the point that I'm trying to make is that storms can not just come from the blessings of the Father, but it can also come from the curses of the devil. Because you have to ask the simple, common question, why would have God the Father have brought forth a storm that was set out to basically sink or destroy the ship with the very Son of Man that was on that boat, on that vessel? I don't believe that God would have done that. So I think at that particular time, the Lord was being tempted, and it was a test that Satan had actually engineered that storm in the Bible, to the degree that the Lord demonstrated his powers by praying for the storm to become calm. And the storm got swept away, and it became calm. And the Son of God used that as an illustration of where is thy faith, because they actually had to wake Jesus up during the time that it was raging, because he had fallen asleep in the boat, and he didn't even know that the storm was becoming that critical. I believe that the Heavenly Father, because of all the wickedness, because of all the sin in society, and I'm going to say this very, very sincerely, and I don't want it to be taken out of context, but I believe that God has lifted his protected hand up off of society temporarily right now, because of so many people that did not appreciate the hand of God that was protecting them. And there's thousands and thousands of different ways that God can protect an individual, not just by a massive storm, but through temptations and desires and greed and selfishness. God can protect that person from going through all those things, to the point that that person won't be overtaken by those temptations. That's the reason why Jesus prayed, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done." And then he goes on to say, "Forgive us this day our daily bread. Lead us not into temptation." Well, what is temptation? Temptation is a desire. It is a manifestation of something that you would want to do. And the Lord is actually praying, "Lord, lead us not into that, but deliver us from evil." Evil can come in many, many different ways. The blessings of God can come in many, many different ways. I believe that right now God has lifted his hand of protection off of this planet, in allowing for humanity to realize just exactly what we are doing to each other and what we are doing to the planet. I believe that God is doing these things for a purpose, because we have become so, I'm going to use the word, unbalanced, to where the wickedness of humanity has become much more stronger and desirable towards people wanting to follow after the ways of evil more so than the ways of righteousness or holiness. And because it's so unbalanced, I think that's why God has lifted his hand of protection up off of the citizens. And that's the reason why it talks about that in the book of Revelations, that these woes, talks about the woes that's going to happen. That as these woes are happening, it says, "Woe be unto the inhabitants here up onto the planet." What are these woes? It's a woe that demonstrates the problems and the severe problems that are going to occur, that are going to go beyond anything like you've ever thought about in these last days, and it also helps to validate or verify where Christ talked and said that in the last days that these would be signs up in the heavens and signs upon the earth, such as mankind has never seen before. Validating the reason for the signs is because of the corruption of humanity. Once more, we're dealing with something that is beyond our capability, most people's capability, of ever even thinking about, much less understanding. And until we're willing to understand what has occurred, why it's occurring, pertaining to global warming, pertaining to all these people that's getting excited and getting out of hand, and all these problems in Afghanistan, and all these problems pertaining to gun violence, and all these other problems pertaining to people seeking drugs, that's basically ruining their lives. Until we're willing to sit down and understand these things, we're not going to be able to understand the solution to them. The solution to these problems is for us to pull together as civil, obedient subservients unto God, and get the wickedness in our lives that's in there out, and try to be even more perfect, as it talks about in the first 3 chapters of Revelations. For I have not yet found thy works perfect yet. To go back, the Bible says, and redo it or get it right. And that going back wasn't just to the people by the sound of my voice, but that going back also included me, myself, and I. Because it's obvious that those scriptures are fulfilling themselves every day as we sit and we watch the entanglement of Mother Earth roaring out in such ways that now it's become, the abnormal has almost become the normal. So please, when you get a hold of this, if there's any way possible that you can help the victims of those recently that has been hit with a massive, I'm going to use the word tsunami, tidal wave, that come through Waverly, Tennessee, I'm sure that those people would be obliged, and I'm sure that those people will be very thankful if you can help them in any way. And I personally am going to help them. I just don't know how that I'm going to help them yet. I don't know if I'm going to send them financial funds, or if I'm going to go back into that area and possibly do something else. I don't know. I'm praying about it. I'm trying to get some things figured out towards what the best of my ability, with me being an hour and a half from this area, what can I do to provide a service for these people that will help cushion their sorrow and their horror that they've just experienced? What can I personally do as a citizen, as a good Samaritan, not just a Tennessee citizen, but as a Christian citizen? What can I do to help in this situation? And I feel like that's where a lot of us are failing God, including myself, is that we're not doing enough for the people that does need our help, because you never know when the next event's going to come around the corner that could possibly be coming your way towards a fire, a flood, an earthquake, a disease, a catastrophic event that will literally drag you down to the bottom if you don't watch. Thanks again for listening. Good luck to all of us as we struggle in life. Coming from the Windmill Ministries, we want to say God bless you, God bless America, God bless our troops, and God bless the Christian society that are waking up and realizing that these occurrences are happening in the last days, that we truly are at the doors. We are truly at the doors towards seeing a mighty movement of God that will resonate with a revival that will eventually evolve into a revolution that will re-revolutionize not just America, but it will re-revolutionize the whole entire planet towards us putting aside or taking out the old and bringing in the new, the way that the holy God, the holy righteous God, the Savior of this earth, the Savior of this society, the risen, living Savior, of how that He has plans of becoming more influential in our lives, to the point that we don't have to worry about such horrors coming into our lives, and that we will see a temporary utopia or a peace that will fall upon the society in the last days, pertaining to the opening of the seals. As the seals are being opened, there'll be more woes that will come. That's where we're at right now in society in 2021, in me making this film off of the tragicness that I just got through witnessing over in Waverly, Tennessee. Once more, we thank you for allowing for us to be a part of your lives, and good luck to all of us. And as we end in every program, we want to say shalom, which means peace. We want the people to have a peace of mind. We want the people to have a good, peaceful consciousness of the things that they're doing. And we want to see humanity pulled together in a peaceful solution towards integrating the way that God intended for the Christians to integrate down here upon to the planet, as far as the meek inheriting this earth. We want to thank you once more for being a part of the Windmill Ministries here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255.